The air in the high conclave of Cathar did not move. It resonated. It was a medium for thought, for power, for the collective will of a species that had brought a galaxy to heal. Light, sharp and crystalline, pulsed from the elevated throne of Archon Vorlag, refracting through the chamber's living, faceted architecture in waves of pure, cold logic. Each of the assembled strategos and loremasters was a nexus of this light, their physical forms, towering exoskeletal carapaces of polished obsidian, acting as both receiver and transmitter. Their communication was a symphony of controlled frequencies, a language of harmonious chimes and shifting chromatic displays that left no room for ambiguity, no shadow for deceit. Yet today, a discordant note had entered their perfect composition. It was a silence, a void, an unnerving stillness that had emanated from the lone, unidentified vessel that had breached the Cinder Reach, a quarantined sector of their vast sovereignty. The silence from the vessel was an act of profound aggression, more unsettling than any broadcast threat or display of weaponry. It suggested an arrogance, a contempt for the established order that the Cathar had spent millennia imposing upon the ashes of a fallen galactic empire. Strategos Rylak, his carapace shimmering with sharp, agitated crimson light, broke the chamber's tense equilibrium. His resonant chimes were like shards of broken crystal, sharp and impatient. The anomaly persists in its silent defiance. It has ignored our hails, our designated protocols, our very presence. It drifts through a restricted zone as if traversing an empty wilderness, not the heart of a secured territory. This is not the behavior of a lost traveler or a simple exploratory craft. It is the calculated posture of a scout, a precursor to an invasion force. We must interpret it as such. The old empire fell because it mistook silence for peace and arrogance for strength. We must not repeat its terminal error. His gaze, a focused point of intense red light, swept across the conclave, settling on Loremaster Xylia. Her form was bathed in a softer, more contemplative sapphire glow, her chimes a low, melodic hum that spoke of patience and deep thought. And what does history teach us, Loremaster? Did the Visek show such contempt before they were pacified? Did the children of solitude maintain such a posture before their worlds were brought into alignment? Xylia's light did not waver. The sapphire hue deepened, her chimes flowing like a slow, cool river. History teaches caution, strategos. The Visek broadcasted their defiance in every spectrum available. The children of solitude screamed their individuality into the void until their voices were hoarse. They were predictable expressions of chaos, their patterns easily mapped, their outcomes logically deduced. This is different. It is a null variable. It does not broadcast, it does not threaten, it does not posture. It simply is. Its trajectory is a perfect economical arc. Its energy signature is a flat line of utter efficiency, a state of being so close to a natural cosmic body that our deep-range sensors nearly dismissed it as a rogue planetoid. She paused, letting the weight of her words fill the chamber. We have sent a drone sensorium, a standard reconnaissance unit designed to be unobtrusive, to gather data without provocation. It was to approach, to scan, to report. It would have given us the information you require to make a measured military decision, Strategos Rylak. It approached the vessel. Its data stream was flawless, its telemetry perfect. And then, at the precise moment it would have begun its deep scan sequence, the stream did not corrupt. It did not degrade. It simply ended. A perfect, instantaneous cessation. Not the signature of a weapon discharge, not the chaotic fragmentation of jamming. It was a surgical removal from existence, as if a thread in the tapestry of spacetime was simply snipped with an impossibly sharp tool. A low murmur of disturbed frequencies rippled through the assembled Cathar. The concept was alien to their understanding of physics and warfare. Destruction was messy. It left echoes, radiation, debris. Jamming was a brute force application of energy. This was something else. It was clean. It was absolute. It was elegant. And that elegance was terrifying. Archon Vorlag's light pulsed, a deep, resonant gold that commanded absolute attention, silencing the nascent disquiet. His chimes were ancient, carrying the authority of one who had personally overseen the final dismantling of the old empire's corrupt and fractured senate. The unknown is a challenge to order. Order is the principle upon which our sovereignty is founded. Chaos, whether born of ignorance or malice, must be confronted and integrated. This vessel, this. Humanity, as the fragmented data from a pre-collapse listening post suggests they call themselves, represents the ultimate unknown. They have emerged. From a sector of the galaxy we deemed fallow, a backwater of undeveloped worlds that were not worth the effort of assimilation. We assumed they were primitive. We assumed they were irrelevant. He turned his full attention to Rylak. You counsel a preemptive strike, strategos, to erase the variable. A fleet, you propose, to descend upon this single ship and reduce it to its constituent atoms. A demonstration of our power, a declaration that this galaxy has a master. Rylak's crimson light intensified. An overwhelming display is the most logical path. It quells any thought of further incursion. It cauterizes the wound before it can fester. If this is a scout, its loss will be a message to its masters. If it is merely arrogant, its destruction will be a lesson in humility. And if it is something else entirely, Xylia's sapphire glow seemed to pierce the aggressive crimson of the strategos. If our drone was not destroyed but contained, if the cessation of its signal was not an act of aggression but one of control, to strike it with a fleet would be like using a sledgehammer to diagnose a delicate, unknown mechanism. We might destroy it, yes, but we would learn nothing. And what if our sledgehammer simply breaks upon its surface? The fall of the Empire was precipitated by a series of such assumptions. They believed their fleets were invincible, their technology supreme. They met a force they did not understand, and they shattered. She was referring not to the Cathar, but to the whispers from the Empire's final days, the fragmented records of encounters in the dark spaces between stars, of ships that went silent, of admirals who spoke of impossible geometries and whispers in the static. The Cathar had dismissed these as the fevered dreams of a dying civilization, a mythologizing of their own incompetence. But the silent human ship and the impossible fate of their drone resonated with those old, unsettling stories. The Archon's light softened, a sign of deep contemplation. The chamber waited, a vast, living computer processing a problem with no precedent. The Cathar mind was a marvel of pattern recognition. They saw the galaxy as a grand, intricate equation, and they were its ultimate solvers. They had solved the problem of the decadent empire, the problem of the chaotic outer worlds, the problem of resource distribution. But this human ship was not a number or a variable. It was a question mark written in a language they did not recognize, hanging over the very foundation of their absolute, ordered reality. Xylia felt a tremor of something she had not experienced since her earliest maturation cycle, when the universe was still a place of frightening wonder and not a solved equation. It was a feeling akin to intellectual vertigo, the sensation of standing at the edge of a vast, dark chasm of ignorance. The Cathar had brought what they called the Great Order, a peace born of absolute control. They had silenced the clamor of 1,000 squabbling worlds, replacing it with the perfect, harmonious chime of one unified will. They believed they had extinguished the unpredictable, the irrational, the chaotic spark of unbridled individuality that had consumed the old empire in flames of civil war and corruption. They saw themselves as saviors, as the galaxy's logical endpoint. But the silence of this one ship was different from the silence they had imposed. Theirs was a constructed silence, a symphony of compliance. This was a natural silence, the silence of a deep ocean, vast and powerful and utterly indifferent. It was the silence of something that did not need to speak to assert its existence. "We will not use a fleet," the Archon finally chimed, his golden light washing over the chamber, overriding all other frequencies. The decision was absolute. "Such a move is born of fear, and we do not fear the unknown. We study it, we dismantle it with logic, we comprehend it, and then we act." His light focused on Rylak. "Strategos, you will dispatch a vanguard, not a fleet of annihilation, but a squadron of our most advanced interceptors, a scalpel, not a hammer. You will encircle the vessel, you will contain it, you will demand its surrender and compliance with our protocols. You will not fire unless fired upon. Your purpose is not destruction, but control." Then his gaze shifted to Xylia. "Loremaster, you will accompany the vanguard on the command vessel. You will open a channel. You will attempt to understand. You will apply your knowledge of history, of xenolinguistics, of the patterns of nascent civilizations. You will be our eyes and our mind. You will solve this anomaly." Rylak's crimson light pulsed with disciplined acceptance, but a flicker of protest remained. "Archon, to place the Loremaster in a potentially hostile zone." "The greatest risk," Vorlag's chime cut through, "is not to the Loremaster's vessel, but to our understanding. We are the sovereignty. Our knowledge must be as absolute. As our power, we have conquered a galaxy. We will not be made fools of by a single silent ship." The finality in his tone was the sound of a closing starport gate, massive and immutable. The decision was made. The equation would be solved. The Cathar would impose their logic upon this defiant silence, and the galaxy would return to its state of perfect, ordered harmony. As the conclave's light patterns shifted to signal their unanimous assent, only Xylia's sapphire glow held a trace of a deeper, colder hue. She felt as though she was being sent to take the measure of a shadow that had fallen not just across their star charts, but across the very concept of their invincibility. The void of the Cinder Reach was a deep, starless black, a region of space scoured clean of nebulae and stellar nurseries by ancient, forgotten energies. It was here the human ship waited, a mote of perfect darkness against an even greater one. Aboard the Cathar command vessel, the unassailable logic, Xylia watched the main tactical display. The human ship was rendered as a simple, featureless ovoid, its shape defined only by the absence of the cosmic background radiation behind it. It absorbed all scans, reflected no energy. It was a hole in the fabric of reality. Around it, the Cathar interceptors, sleek, dagger-like vessels of polished obsidian, moved into a containment formation, their own energy signatures glowing like hot embers on the display. They were expressions of pure Cathar design philosophy, aggressive, efficient, and brutally direct. Stratego's Rylak's holographic presence shimmered on the bridge, his crimson form a stark contrast to the cool blues of the command interface. He was not physically present but was networked directly from his central command, his will executed by the squadron's dutiful commander. "The containment sphere is established, Loremaster." His chimes resonated through the bridge's audio emitters. "The vessel is trapped. It has made no move to evade, no attempt to power weapons or shields. It continues its passive defiance." "It is not defiance, Strategos," Xylia chimed softly, her gaze fixed on the void on the screen. "It is patience." "Patience is a luxury of the powerful or the foolish," Rylak retorted. "We will soon discover which this is. Commander, open a universal hail. Standard sovereignty introduction protocol. Demand identification and statement of intent. Inform them they have violated a restricted military zone and must submit to inspection or face immediate pacification." The commander, a younger Cathar whose carapace gleamed with the perfection of his training, executed the command. A cascade of energy, encoded with the rigid authoritarian greeting of the sovereignty, was beamed at the silent ship. It was a message that had made fleets tremble and worlds capitulate. It was the voice of galactic order itself. The reply was not what they expected. There was no audio response, no data packet returned. Instead, a single elegant line of light appeared on the main viewer. It was not a transmission in the Cathar sense. It was as if someone had drawn a line of pure white light directly onto the fabric of space itself. The line then folded, bent, and reshaped itself, forming simple, two-dimensional geometric shapes. A circle, a triangle, a square. Then it began to depict the relationships between them, Pythagoras' theorem, drawn in starlight. It was followed by a visualization of the value of pi, calculated to 1,000 decimal places. Then a perfect animated representation of the hydrogen atom, followed by helium, then lithium, building the periodic table with silent, luminous grace. Xylia felt a jolt, a profound intellectual shock. This was not the communication of a nascent species or a belligerent power. This was the language of pure reason, of mathematics, of physics. It was a message that bypassed culture, language, and politics and spoke directly in the universal tongue of logic. It was an intelligence test. Can you understand this? Do you see the universe as we do, as a place of fundamental, elegant rules? It was an introduction of breathtaking confidence and intellectual purity. "What is this?" Rylak's chimes were sharp with confusion. "Some kind of symbolic threat, a display of their computational power." "No, Strategos," Xylia breathed, her sapphire light glowing with sudden, intense focus. "It is a greeting. They have been listening, not just to our hails, but to the very resonance of our civilization. They know we value logic above all else. This is their way of saying, we are like you, we are minds, we think." They are establishing a baseline of mutual understanding before they speak. Before the Strategos could process this, the light on the screen dissolved. In its place, the image of the human ship appeared. But it was not a scan or a rendering. It was a perfect, real-time visual, as if they were looking out a viewport from mere meters away. And then, the image resolved further. A section of the ship's featureless black hull became transparent, showing a space within. It was a bridge, but unlike the stark, functional command centers of the Cathar, it was warm, subtly lit, and occupied by a single figure. A human. It was a bipedal form, soft-skinned, with a face that was a canvas of subtle mobility. It was seated in a simple chair, its hands resting on a clean, uncluttered console. The being was female by the standards of their limited archaic data. She wore a simple, dark uniform adorned with a single, unfamiliar insignia. Her expression was calm, her gaze directed forward as if she were looking directly at them, through the vastness of space, through their view screen, and into the very core of their Cathar minds. A voice then filled the bridge of the unassailable logic. It was not a chime, not a frequency, but a modulated series of air vibrations, translated with flawless precision into the Cathar's core conceptual language by their own systems. The voice was smooth, measured, and devoid of any discernible emotion, yet it carried an undeniable weight of authority. "This is Captain Eva Rostova of the human exploratory vessel Odyssey," the voice said. "We acknowledge your presence and your concern. We understand that we have entered your sovereign space. Our intrusion was not an act of hostility. We are here as observers." The sheer calm of the statement was a weapon in itself. The Cathar bridge was silent, the crew frozen. They were surrounded by an armed squadron, accused of a violation punishable by annihilation, and their response was a polite, academic clarification. Rylak, recovering first, projected his voice through the ship's external comms. His chimes were laced with cold fury. "Your observation is unauthorized. You have disabled a sovereignty drone sensorium. By our law, that is an act of war. Explain your actions." The human, Rostova, did not flinch. Her gaze remained steady. The drone was not disabled. Its function was invasive. It was preparing to conduct a deep energy scan that would have interfered with our vessel's primary systems. We could not allow that, so we took it. "Took it," Rylak's frequency sharpened. "The drone is gone, it was destroyed." "No," the human captain replied, her voice maintaining its impossible placidity. "It was not destroyed. We simply moved it. We enveloped it in a localized distortion of spacetime, copied its complete data logs to ensure we understood its purpose, and relocated it to its point of origin. It should have reappeared in your deployment bay approximately 7 of your standard time units ago. We felt this was a more considerate alternative to its destruction." A communications officer on the bridge frantically checked his console. His carapace flickered with a pattern of disbelief. "Strategos, Loremaster, I am receiving a priority message from the fleet's staging area. The drone sensorium, it reappeared in its launch cradle moments ago. It is completely intact, unpowered but present. The maintenance crews are in a state of analytical confusion." The bridge of the unassailable logic was plunged into a new kind of silence. Xylia felt the foundations of her reality begin to crack. To move an object across light years instantaneously, to not just deflect a scan, but to physically relocate the scanner itself. This was not technology as the Cathar understood it. Their own FTL drives tore brutal, temporary holes in reality. It was a violent, energy-intensive process. This was different. It was effortless. It was mastery. It was like comparing a Cathar plasma cannon to the gentle, irresistible force of a planet's gravity. Rylak was, for the first time in his long military career, at a loss. The humans had not only proven their technological superiority in a way that was utterly undeniable, but they had done so in a manner that was completely non-aggressive. They had returned the drone. They had de-escalated a situation where the Cathar had been fully prepared for violence. They had answered a threat of force with an act of quiet, incomprehensible power and, bizarrely, politeness. Xylia found her voice first, her sapphire light a beacon of calm in the swirling confusion. She addressed the human captain directly, her chimes soft and inquisitive. "Captain Rostova, I am Loremaster Xylia. You speak of observation. What is it that you are here to observe? This region of space has been barren for eons." The human captain's eyes seemed to soften, a minute shift in her facial muscles that the Cathar translators flagged as a sign of sincere engagement. "Loremaster Xylia, it is an honor. We have studied what fragments we could of Cathar historical and scientific traditions. Your title carries great weight." This acknowledgement, this sign of respect, sent another ripple of shock through the Cathar crew. "We are not observing the space as it is now," Rostova continued, "but as it was, our V. SL the Odyssey is a quantum echo cartographer. We map the faint, residual gravitational and temporal signatures left behind by significant events. We are, in a sense, archaeologists of spacetime. This region, which you call the Cinder Reach, was the site of a significant event, long before the rise of your sovereignty or the empire that preceded you. We are here to read the final pages of a very old story." Rylak's crimson light flared again, a return to his familiar posture of suspicion. "You expect us to believe your vessel is a mere scientific instrument? Its energy signature is masked. Its hull is impervious to our scans. These are the hallmarks of a warship of the highest order. For the first time, the barest hint of another emotion entered the human's voice. It was not amusement, not quite. It was closer to the gentle patience of a teacher explaining a complex concept to a child. Strategos, our hull is not masked or impervious. It is in a state of constant quantum flux. It does not have a single fixed location in space. This makes it difficult to scan and, incidentally, highly resilient to conventional weaponry, but its purpose is not military. This state is necessary to protect our sensitive internal instruments from the very spacetime distortions we are trying to measure. You see our technology as a weapon because your philosophy is centered on conflict. You wield power like a blade. We believe true power lies in understanding, not in coercion. The principles that drive our ship could be used for warfare, I suppose. A river can be used to power a mill or to drown an army. The choice lies not in the river, but in the one who diverts its course. Her words hung in the air, a profound philosophical challenge to the entire Cathar way of life. The sovereignty was built on the principle that order must be imposed, that conflict was an inevitability to be met with overwhelming force. The humans were suggesting an alternative path, one where power was so absolute that the very need for conflict became obsolete. Rylak, incensed by the implication, decided to force the issue. A direct challenge. Your philosophy is noted, Captain, but your presence here remains a violation. Your mapping is disrupting our security patrols. I will give you one chance to prove your peaceful intent. Power down your flux drive. Allow a Cathar inspection team to board your vessel. If you are what you claim, you have nothing to fear. If you refuse, I will be forced to conclude that your words are a deception, and I will take action to neutralize the threat you represent. The demand was an ultimatum. To the Cathar, it was a logical and final step. To refuse inspection was an admission of guilt. Xylia held her breath, the light from her carapace dimming in apprehension. This was the moment of truth. She expected the human to refuse, for the calm facade to break, for the weapons to finally show themselves. Captain Rostova's expression did not change. Her calm was a deep and unshakable sea. Strategos, boarding our vessel is not possible, not out of a lack of trust, but for practical reasons. Your physiology would not be compatible with our environment. More importantly, the quantum state of our ship's interior is not stable in a way your biology could withstand. However, I understand your need for verification. She paused, and the view on the screen shifted. It pulled back from her bridge, showing the exterior of the Odyssey once more, floating in the silent dark. You wish for a demonstration of our intent. Very well, please observe. Then something impossible happened. The black, featureless hull of the human ship began to shimmer. It became translucent, then transparent, like a ghost of a vessel. Through its now see-through form, the Cathar could see the stars behind it. They could see its internal structure, its corridors, its power conduits, its laboratories filled with strange, gleaming equipment. They could see humanoid figures moving within, calm and unhurried. There was no vast weapons battery, no cavernous hangar for strike craft, no legion of soldiers. It was, just as the captain had claimed, a vast, intricate laboratory, a university of a ship. But that was not the true demonstration. Strategos Rylak, Captain Rostova's voice continued, resonating with a new, deeper gravity. You ordered your squadron to contain us, a logical military maneuver, but the concept of containment is relative. As she spoke, the space around the Cathar interceptors began to warp. There was no energy discharge, no visible force field. The very fabric of spacetime itself was being gently, but inexorably, manipulated. On the tactical display of the unassailable logic, the icons of their own ships began to drift. Their commanders reported a total loss of navigational control. Their engines were firing at maximum, yet they were sliding backward, away from the Odyssey, their perfect containment sphere being effortlessly gantly unmade. They were not being attacked, they were being moved. The entire squadron of elite Cathar warships was being herded like primitive beasts by a shepherd who controlled the very ground beneath their feet. Then came the final, terrifying display. One of the interceptors, on Rylak's frantic and furious command, fired its primary weapon, a lance of concentrated plasma designed to pierce the armor of a dreadnought. The incandescent beam shot toward the now transparent Odyssey, but it never reached it. Halfway to its target, the beam of pure energy began to bend. Its trajectory curved, not as if deflected by a shield, but as if it were following a newly created contour in space. The plasma lance, a symbol of Cathar military might, was caught in a gravitational eddy. It looped around the human ship in a silent, beautiful, and utterly harmless orbit, a man-made star held captive, its destructive power rendered into a mere curiosity, a celestial ornament. On the bridge of the unassailable logic, there was a silence so profound it felt like the end of the universe. The crew was frozen, their light displays flickering with the chaotic patterns of pure, undiluted shock. Even Rylak's holographic form was static, his crimson glow muted to a dull, bewildered rose. They had brought a sword to a contest of ideas, and their opponent had responded by calmly rewriting the laws of physics. They had not been defeated. They had been rendered irrelevant. Captain Rostova's face reappeared on the screen. Her expression was still calm, but now Xylia could see, deep in her eyes, a hint of something else. It was not pity. It was a profound, ancient sadness. "We do not seek conflict," the human said, her voice a soft finality. "Our purpose here is too important. We are charting the echo of a great extinction, a silence that is falling upon the galaxy, the same silence that weakened the old empire and allowed for your ascendancy. You believe you conquered them, but you were merely the inheritors of a house already collapsing from within. We are here to find the source of the decay." Xylia's mind raced, connecting the human's words to the fragmented, mythologized histories of the Empire's fall. The whispering plague, the cognitive decay, the great unraveling. The Cathar had dismissed these as metaphors for social corruption. But what if they were literal? What if a civilization could be sickened? "The demonstration is concluded, strategos," Rostova said, her gaze shifting to a point beyond the screen as if looking at Rylak's true position light years away. "Your ships are now free to move. We ask that you give us the space to complete our work. When we are done, we will share our findings with you. The Cathar sovereignty is a part of this galaxy. You have a right to know what is coming for it." The space around the Cathar squadron returned to normal. The plasma lance, its energy finally spent, dissipated into a faint, glowing cloud. The human ship, the Odyssey, slowly faded back to its perfect, featureless black, its internal workings once again a mystery. It had shown them a glimpse of its soul, and the sight had been both magnificent and terrifying. It had revealed a level of power that the Cathar had never conceived of, a power wielded not with anger or pride, but with the quiet, focused precision of a surgeon. Rylak did not speak. His hologram simply vanished from the bridge. It was a retreat more absolute than any verbal concession. He had no response, his logic had failed, his force was meaningless. Xylia stood alone in the center of her bridge, bathed in her own sapphire light. She looked at the silent black ovoid on her screen, and she finally understood. The humans were not a threat to the Cathar sovereignty. They were not a challenge to their power. They were something far more profound. They were a revelation. They were the living embodiment of a truth the Cathar had forgotten, that the universe was infinitely larger and more mysterious than any equation, and that true mastery did not come from imposing one's will upon it, but from listening to its deepest, oldest songs. And the song the humans were listening to was a dirge. A channel opened, a private one, from the human ship to her console alone. It was Captain Rostova's voice, now warmer, stripped of its formal severity. "Loremaster Xylia, your chimes, they resonate with curiosity, not fear. That is a rare quality. When our work is done here, I would like to speak with you directly. There is much to discuss about the future, about the silence that lies ahead." Xylia found her own voice, her chimes forming a response that was both an acceptance and a question, a note of hope in a symphony of encroaching dread. "I will be waiting, Captain. I believe my people have been living in a different kind of silence for far too long." In the high conclave, now reconvened, a new kind of resonance filled the air. The sharp, aggressive frequencies of Serta. And TY had been replaced by a low, humming thrum of profound reevaluation. The detailed report from the unassailable logic, including the full visual and data logs of the encounter with the Odyssey, had been disseminated to every member. There was no debate. There was no argument. The evidence was absolute, a perfect, logical proof that had shattered their core assumptions. The crimson light of Strategos Rylak was gone, his throne empty. He had not been punished or demoted. He had voluntarily receded into a state of deep meditative silence, a Cathar practice for processing a complete paradigm failure. He had dedicated his existence to the application of superior force, and had been shown that his concept of force was laughably primitive. The intellectual shock was too great to bear in a state of active command. Archon Vorlag's golden light was steady, but it had lost its hard, imperious edge. It was softer now, more inquisitive. He addressed Xylia, who stood in the center of the chamber, her sapphire glow a focal point of the new, uncertain reality. "You have spoken with the human captain, Loremaster, in private. The council requires your report." Xylia inclined her head, a slow, deliberate gesture of respect. "I have, Archon. The conversation was illuminating. It has fundamentally altered my understanding of our place in the galaxy." She projected her memories of the conversation into the conclave's shared psychic space, a stream of pure data, concepts, and the calm, resonant voice of Captain Eva Rostova. The human captain had not gloated. She had not demanded concessions or offered threats. She had simply explained. She showed Xylia the data the Odyssey had been gathering, not star charts or energy readings, but something far more esoteric. They were maps of civilizational cohesion, graphs tracking the rise and fall of collective will across galactic history. The patterns were undeniable. For millions of years, empires had risen, expanded, and then at the peak of their power they had begun to unravel, not from external attack, but from within. A slow, creeping plague of radical individualism, of schism, of a breakdown in shared purpose. Communication became noise. Unity became a cage. Society atomized, then collapsed into internecine warfare, leaving behind only ruins and fragmented, primitive survivors. The great Galactic Empire, whose corpse the Cathar had so proudly picked clean, was merely the most recent and dramatic victim. "You call it the substrate signal," Rostova's voice echoed in the conclave's collective mind. "It is not a weapon, not as you would understand it. It is an influence, a deeply ancient, pervasive field that resonates with the complex neurological and social structures of advanced organic life. It amplifies the ego, the desire for individual assertion, the suspicion of the other. It turns the strengths of a diverse, individualistic society, creativity, ambition, freedom, into fatal weaknesses. It encourages chaos not by force, but by a gentle, persistent whisper in the soul of a civilization, telling every single member that they are the center of the universe." A wave of understanding, cold and terrifying, washed through the Cathar. They were a collectivist species. Their entire society was built on the suppression of the individual ego for the good of the whole. The substrate signal, as the humans described it, would have found no purchase in their unified minds. That was why they had risen while the Empire, a messy, chaotic tapestry of 1,000,000,000,000 different individual wills, had torn itself apart. Their greatest perceived strength, their rigid order, had been their shield. They had not conquered the galaxy through might alone. They had been immune to the plague that had laid it low. "But the signal adapts," Rostova had continued, her voice growing heavy. "It is not a mindless force of nature. It learns. In the ages since the Empire's fall, it has begun to change its frequency, its method. We have seen its new form on a handful of nascent worlds. It no longer just promotes radical individualism. It has learned to mimic the patterns of order. It promotes a different kind of decay, a rigid, unquestioning conformity that stifles innovation and adaptation. It turns collectives into brittle, crystalline structures that cannot bend, and will therefore shatter at the first significant impact from an outside force. It is learning how to kill your kind of civilization, Archon. Your very strength is now becoming your targeted vulnerability." This was the true revelation, the blow that landed with more force than any plasma cannon. The Cathar's order, their perfect logic, was not the endpoint of galactic evolution. It was simply the next meal for a predator they had never known existed. Their peace was not permanent. It was the calm before a new, more insidious storm. "Why?" The Archon's chime cut through the shared memory, a question directed at Xylia, but meant for the ghost of the hum. "And Captain, what is the source of this signal? What is its purpose?" Xylia's sapphire light deepened. She projected the final piece of information Captain Rostova had shared with her. It was an image, compiled from 1,000,000,000 points of gravitational echo data, a picture of something that should not exist. It was a structure, vast beyond comprehension. It floated in the absolute lightless void between galaxies. It was not a sphere or a ring or any familiar shape of megastructure engineering. It was a latticework of impossible geometry, a fractal web of black, non-reflective material that seemed to absorb the very concept of light. It was older than any star in their galaxy, its existence a violation of known cosmological principles. It was utterly, profoundly silent. It broadcasted nothing. It emitted no energy. Yet the Odyssey's instruments proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that the substrate signal, the psychic plague that had consumed civilizations for eons, was the residual echo of this object's last, ancient activity. It wasn't broadcasting now. It was sleeping, and the decay of the galaxy was merely the fading resonance of its last exhalation. The humans call it the silentium. Xylia's voice was a whisper in the vast chamber. They do not know what it is, who built it, or for what purpose. They only know that its influence is the antithesis of complex, organized life. Perhaps it is a weapon from an ancient, forgotten war. Perhaps it is a terraforming device for a form of life we cannot comprehend. Or perhaps it is simply a monument to a philosophy that despises the noise and chaos of existence. They do not know. All they know is that its echo is fading. The period of quiet the galaxy has experienced for the last several millennia is coming to an end. Their instruments predict that the silentium is beginning to stir. It is preparing to broadcast again. The finality of the statement settled over the conclave like a shroud. Their grand sovereignty, their conquest of the galaxy, their great order, it was all a brief interlude, a fleeting moment of calm in a storm that had been raging for eternity. They were not masters. They were mayflies born on a summer's day, congratulating themselves on the fine weather, unaware of the coming winter. The Archon's golden light pulsed, a slow, rhythmic beat like a dying star's heart. What do they want from us? The humans, this Captain Rostova. Why reveal this to us? They have the power to ignore us, to destroy us. Why share this burden? Because, Xylia replied, turning her gaze to the great crystal ceiling of the conclave, as if looking out at the stars beyond, they are not like the old empire, and they are not like us. The empire was a collection of individuals who valued nothing but themselves. We are a collective that values nothing but the whole. Both are imbalances. Both are, in their own way, fragile. The humans, they have found a third way, a unity of individuals. They call it humanity. They believe that the unique perspective of the individual is essential for the creativity and adaptability of the whole. They argue, they debate, they disagree, but they are bound by a shared empathy, a common purpose that transcends their individual egos. They believe this balance is the only thing that can withstand the new signal from the silentium. She paused, letting the truly revolutionary concept settle in. Captain Rostova did not come to our space by accident. The Odyssey is one of many such ships. Humanity has been on a long, quiet pilgrimage, visiting every surviving advanced species in the galaxy. They are not conquerors. They are not even explorers. They are messengers. They are offering an alliance, a galactic concord. Not an empire built on force or a sovereignty built on rigid conformity, but a willing partnership of civilizations, each contributing its unique strengths. They believe the rigid logic and order of the Cathar, when tempered with the creativity of other species and the adaptability of their own, is the only weapon that might have a chance. They are not asking us to surrender. They are asking us to evolve. In the silent chamber, Archon Vorlag, the ruler of 1,000 worlds, the architect of the Great Order, did something no Cathar had done in millennia of recorded history. The light from his throne shifted from gold to a soft, brilliant white, the Cathar frequency for pure, unfiltered humility. "We have lived our entire existence," he chimed, his voice resonating not with the command of an emperor, but with the awe of a philosopher who has just glimpsed the true face of the cosmos, believing that we were the answer to the chaos of the galaxy. We were wrong. We were merely a single, incomplete thought in a much larger, more terrifying conversation. His white light expanded, touching the sapphire of Xylia and then spreading to the other members of the conclave, their own colors shifting in response. The rigid F. Frequencies of their old order dissolved, replaced by a new harmony, a complex and beautiful chord of uncertainty, of fear, but also of a dawning, terrifying hope. Out in the cinder reach, the Odyssey waited, a patient silhouette against the starless void. It was no longer a symbol of defiance or a technological marvel. It was a hand, extended in the darkness. It was an invitation to stand together, a small collection of disparate, noisy voices, against a silence that threatened to consume everything. The Galactic Empire had fallen under Cathar rule. But now both the Cathar and the humans, inheritors and observers, stood before a truth far greater, that the galaxy itself was falling, and the only hope for survival lay not in rule, but in unity. The lone human warship had not entered their reach to conquer it, but to show them that their reach, and the reach of all life, was about to shrink to nothing if they did not learn to stand together and face the coming night.